Hey everyone! With patch 8.10 just being released, a lot of junglers are at a loss for which champions to play, how to route, and just how important these new scuttle crabs are. But don't worry, we've got you covered. While the jungle meta will have to develop over the coming weeks, we have a great first read on which champions to play and how to play them, which will give you a huge advantage over your opponents in solo queue. The three big topics that we'll hit are the new scuttle crab and its priority level, which champions are OP, and how you should pad through the jungle with them. Let's get started. So the first thing that we want to touch on are those changes to the scuttle crab. For those who don't know, Scuttle has received massive XP buffs, going from 10 XP to between 115 and 230, scaling throughout the game. The way it spawns has also changed. Initially, 2 crabs will spawn on both sides of the map at exactly 2 minutes. Once both are killed, 2 minutes and 15 seconds later, another single scuttle will spawn randomly on either side of the map. Only one scuttle will exist at any time for the rest of the game. A lot of pros and streamers are voicing their opinions that scuttles are the most important thing in the game, with one pro saying to quote, "Just pick a level 2 spiking jungler, take scuttles, and win." But we find this a bit curious, as the first scuttle that spawns is really just another gromp, albeit a gromp that doesn't fight back and damage you, as well as providing some light vision control. So it's not going to give you some huge XP or gold lead to take these first scuttles, and as we'll discuss later, prioritizing them does negatively affect your pathing later on. So while we're not convinced by the absolute importance of the first scuttle spawns, the following spawns are very powerful, scaling well throughout the game in both gold and experience. And the scuttle's level is based on the average level of all champions in the game. So the second scuttle that spawns will likely be level 3 or 4, the third level 4 or 5, depending on how quickly they are killed, etc. So they become very powerful very quickly and should be contested when possible. Okay, we've now covered the changes to the scuttle as well as our initial take on its priority, which we will go into more later on. But let's talk quickly about the OP picks for this patch. So it looks like there will be 2 main playstyles for junglers on this patch. Aggressive early game jungling to control early scuttle crabs and look to gank, and a more farm oriented playstyle focused on getting XP and gold leads early by farming and transitioning that lead into future scuttles and more efficient farming. Here's a look at some of the higher tier champions that would loosely fit into either category on this patch. Within these champions, some of the early potential OP picks are Xin Zhao for his incredible dueling ability that gives him massive scuttle priority and strong early ganks, as well as Kayn and Graves for their very strong clears and mid-game spikes, allowing them to control future scuttle crabs. And just to quickly emphasize the difference between these 2 playstyles, someone like Kayn or Graves is very likely to do a very full clear, taking a lot of camps away, checking scuttle to see if it's there, maybe then invading into the enemy jungle, just very focused on that efficient farming, so that when the second spawn of camps comes around, they can very quickly clear them again efficiently, and they're going to be up soon because they're being prioritized right away. However, someone like Camille might start at red, then move out to scuttle, level 2 gank in mid, then move over to the other scuttle. So kind of leaving a lot of these smaller camps up, so they're going to be spawning very, very late for that second round of spawning, but they're going to be getting vision, they're going to be ganking, and just be a lot more active on the map. So we'll talk about those routes more specifically later, but this is kind of the difference between those 2 playstyles in a nutshell. Beyond that, champions like Nunu and Ivern may also develop their own effective playstyle based on supporting their team and denying the enemy jungler scuttles. Okay, we've now covered which champions you'll want to be prioritizing this patch, so let's get more detailed on the exact routes that you'll want to use. First off, I want to say that we can't cover every route or say which is definitively best, as there's tons of variability right now as players continue to experiment. So we're just going to recommend a couple of viable, solid routes to get you started. Anyway, let's start by looking at the routes for the early scuttle control and ganking playstyle. Here's the first route that will give you level 3 around 2 minutes and 50 seconds, at which point you want to look for a gank nearby, but if nothing is available, you can continue farming by taking your wolves, then crossing mid to check on scuttle, or take raptors and krugs. But if you saw another early scuttle champion starting topside and heading bottom, don't waste your time checking scuttle. Alternatively, if the enemy jungler isn't good at clearing raptors, you can invade there instead of pathing across mid. Okay, there's the first route for early control and gank junglers. Now let's look at one that's a bit cheesier, because who doesn't like a bit of cheese? Here it is. So this is a route that sets you up to kill both scuttle crabs and hit level 3, as well as allowing you to gank mid at level 2. After, you can look for a gank nearby, invade raptors if you think they're still up, or just farm your own camps. Here's a challenger Camille planning on the buff, scuttle, gank mid, scuttle, buff route. Camille grabs her red and runs out to grab scuttle before heading over to the mid lane. And once Zoe walks up, Camille jumps in for the easy first blood. Camille then helps Vlad push mid and runs down toward the next scuttle before realizing that Jax already killed it. This is where the jungler's ability to improvise comes into play. Recognizing that the experienced mid lane gave level 3, Camille decides to run bot lane for a gank rather than look for more farm. Camille engages, but Xayah avoids with a nicely timed flash. At this point, Camille makes the aggressive decision to push and force a dive, knowing that Jax is top from watching him mid lane. Let's see what happens. So this was a super successful early game from Camille, where she planned on the buff, scuttle, gank, scuttle, buff route, but improvised when Jax took scuttle and she had level 3 anyway. So there are the routes that we recommend you try out if you're playing one of those aggressive early champions. But be prepared to improvise, as it's impossible to predict what your opponent will do this early in the patch, so who knows if that scuttle crab will even be up when you get there. Alright, let's now talk about the route for our more farm-centric champions. Here's what we recommend doing. It's a very efficient clear that will allow you to potentially grab scuttle and or raptors if your opponent left them up. You can also check krugs after raptors if you're positive that your opponent paths down to the bottom side and won't catch you out there. And the great thing about this route that we hinted at earlier is that it does allow you to clear in a very efficient way that will set up a really nice second clear where you can go back to base, then come to your krugs, and do the whole thing over again, obviously skipping the buffs. This is a lot better than some of those early game scuttle routes in terms of efficiency, because they're kind of taking camps sporadically from the jungle, not really in order. So their second clear, they might have to go from wolves to gromp, back to their raptors, etc. It's just a lot of extra running around for those routes compared to this really nice clean one that sets up another really nice clean second route. Let's take a look at an example of this as we see a challenger Kayn going red, raptors, wolves, blue, gromp, just like our route shows. He then moves into the river, sees that Scuttle is gone, and moves on to the raptors. However, he gets collapsed on. Let's see what happens. so that went really well. Thankfully, LeBlanc had priority and got there first. Kayn did a nice job of stalling for her as well, recognizing this. Obviously this was a bit dangerous, so be sure that you either have mid priority like Kayn did here before going in like this, or know that the enemy jungler is bot. Now we get to see Kayn make disgusting use of his efficiently respawning camps as he kills Scuttle, then does another full clear, even heading back into the enemy Raptor camp with low HP due to Shaco being dead. This allows him to hit level 6 at 6 minutes. Now obviously this was a very extreme example where Kayn was able to do whatever he wanted due to Shaco's 2 deaths and his lanes winning. But hopefully this shows off the power of that first efficient clear followed up by yet another efficient clear after. So there we have it. Hopefully this served as a useful introduction to jungling in patch 8.10, as we tackled the Scuttle Crab priority by pointing out that first Scuttle is possibly overrated, where the later spawns are amazing, by letting you know some of the top picks for this patch, as well as some good routes that will let you utilize those OP picks. As I mentioned before, everything is up in the air right now, so be sure to check back daily for more videos unpacking the developments in this meta. Thanks for watching.